you for visiting the Africa Rising Cycling Podcast, where we share the big and most interesting cycling stories from across the continent of Africa and from around the world where African cyclists are racing and riding. Welcome to the Africa Rising Cycling Podcast. From time to time, we'd like to feature some of our outstanding partners across the African continent. These partners range from federations and teams to nonprofits that deliver bikes across the continent. We rely on this incredible network, our village, to help African kids via the bicycle. So today, we're thrilled to introduce you to Joshua Popple. He's the executive director of Village Bicycle Project. We always talk about how small the world of cycling is and how much tinier it becomes in Africa. Welcome to the Africa Rising Cycling Podcast, Joshua.
Thanks, Kimberly. Could you tell us more about the Village Bicycle Project, your primary mission, current status, and what's planned for the future?
Village Bicycle Project was started in 1999 by a former Peace Corps volunteer in the Gambia who recognized both the need and the opportunity for bicycles as a cheap and sustainable form of transportation. And after he finished his Peace Corps term, he spent some time kind of traveling around West Africa trying to figure out where the best place to start this initiative was. And at the time, Ghana actually had a reasonable bike market based in Accra, and they also had some of the lowest and easiest import fees and duties in West Africa. So that's where he started, essentially packing up a couple of bicycles and a backpack full of tools and just trying to get this initiative started. Really amazing what he accomplished in those first couple of years. And now that we're 26 years into it, we've delivered over 150,000 bicycles, primarily working with students these days are our primary focus. But we work with healthcare workers, local farmers, pretty much anybody that can benefit from cheap and easy transportation through the bicycle.
And what role do you think the local mechanics play in building these sustainable cycling communities?
That's a great question, Kim. I think when you look at the way that we do our programming in both Ghana and Sierra Leone, we try to do it in three different stages. So we work with a Learn to Ride program in local communities, particularly with women and girls if they have not had the chance to learn how to ride a bike, which was particularly true in the early years of Village Bike Project. The bulk of our programming is this one-day workshop where we actually distribute the bikes at a highly subsidized price. And then the third, and possibly the most important in terms of the long-term sustainability of the work that we do, is trying to do advanced mechanical training with any local repairers. And as part of that, we also try to distribute a decent set of tools. So every community that we work with has a local repairer that is knowledgeable, and B, that actually has the tools they need to follow through and keep the bikes running. So that really has been huge. I think when you look at the efficacy of the work that we're doing, it's easy enough on some level for us to get the bikes into the community, but making sure that they continue to work year after year after year really comes down to those local mechanics. And that's been absolutely huge. I think you can look at the communities that have had the most success, both in Ghana and Sierra Leone, are those where you have a reliable, committed mechanic who has the knowledge and the ability to keep those bikes running.
Yeah, it's so important. I was talking to someone the other day about Allen keys because we were discussing how moto mechanics, because everyone thinks, oh, you go to a moto mechanic, they'll fix your bike. And they were saying there's no Allen key bolts on a motorbike, on a moped. It's only bicycles that use Allen keys. So unless guys like you guys have supplied Allen keys or trained mechanics to use them, these local, especially in the villages, there's no 6mm Allen key available to even change a headset or fix a seat post. So it's such an important part of the infrastructure that a lot of people don't think about. Why do you think Ghana and Sierra Leone have been so successful for Village Bicycle Project so far?
There's almost two contrasting stories there. As I said, Ghana was the starting pace of the organization because it already had that bike market. It had easy access. And actually since then, the Canadian government has sort of changed the import fees and the taxes, not necessarily to the benefit of the bicycle industry there, but it worked out well when we were initially there. Sierra Leone was a bit of a separate case where Dave Peckham, who's the founder of the organization, the Peace Corps volunteer, spent some time there and was trying to expand out of Ghana, and essentially took the same tactic where he was trying to find somebody to work with. And Sierra Leone, Freetown did not have that same bike market that he could just kind of go to and find those resources. And this is where he met Kareem Kamara, who at the time was a relatively young teenager. And Dave had gone around, he had this backpack full of tools, and he's trying to find somebody to work with. And all the local bike guys in Sierra Leone were like, who is this white guy? Like, we don't trust him. We don't know what he's doing. And Kareem, like the youngest kid there, essentially was like, I'm in. Let's figure out a way to make this work. And he's the one that actually started working with Dave. And it really is a tremendous story of how Kareem went from, being this local bike rider to meeting Dave and really planting the seeds and growing the network that he has there. And a lot of that, I think, is a tribute to Kareem as just a tremendous entrepreneur. But the fact that he had that vision as a teenager to start doing that, I think was amazing. And when I think about the work that Dave did and the work that Kareem did, I am tremendously grateful. I don't think that my skill set would have been able to start the organization in the way that they did, but it's wonderful to see. It's wonderful to see where the organization is now. It's wonderful to see where Kareem is and how he's grown that initial conversation with, this random guy into this tremendous force for bicycling in the country of Sierra Leone. I mean, both from a utility transportation perspective, as well as the competitive side through Lunsar Cycling and the Tour de Lunsar. I think it's possibly, it's certainly one of the best success stories that we as an organization have to share.
I know at one point we shipped in like 20 toolboxes from Park Tools, and it was all set up through Kareem, and did a training course, and we had women and men. And like for us, especially having women become mechanics in Africa is so important.
I think that also ties into the whole idea of the biggest success stories too. When we initially started working in a lot of the communities, it was taboo for girls and women to ride bikes. And I mean, I think that is also another one of the big success stories, is that we've completely changed the perception of who benefits from riding a bike, and the fact that these communities now have a plethora of women biking to work, biking to school, whatever it is that their profession. That really is huge. And I think it's one of the biggest selling pieces when we reach out to donors, is the impact that it has on the local girls that we work with. And particularly if it's giving them access to education, it really opens up their world in a way that would never exist had we not worked in that community. The secondary piece of that is, once we go through this process of like teaching girls how to ride and then giving them a bicycle, we have had a number of women that have gone through our program and then were like, we love what you're doing. We want to get involved. So from time to time in Ghana, we've had a couple of different women on our team who were pretty much, to my knowledge, the only female mechanic repairers in Ghana. The same thing has happened in Sierra Leone. This is another great story in that Kareem has worked with one of the women that he knows to start the first female-owned bike shop in the country. And this was another one of those things that was theoretically inconceivable a few years prior. And the fact that we now have not just one, but there's a second woman as well that have started their own bike shops. Like, it is transformative. It's great to see that. It really starts to break down those typical gender barriers that you deal with. And then continuing along this, this theme of the benefit to women, is like some of these women that we've started working with who, I mean, it's not inconceivable that they could go their whole lives and possibly never go more than 5 or 10 miles from their community. that have now gotten involved with the cycling team and are able to compete on an international level. I mean, the geography of that like small village going to like the bigger world is another one of those images that I just think is tremendous. And again, I think a lot of that goes to Kareem and what he's been able to accomplish, but the impact on young women, competitive women, the whole spectrum, and just in terms of like giving them access to a bicycle, giving them access to education, giving them access to like competition and potentially the livelihood of being a competitive cyclist. Like it is transformative. It never fails to be heartwarming from my perspective to see those stories.
There's always the impact of those stories, right? Because people talk about it and you see more and more people wanting to become cyclists rather than just riding bikes to work or to school. And as you say, we've seen now more riders from Ghana and Sierra Leone kind of coming to races in Africa, whether it's just domestic or things like the Africa Champs. And that's a huge thing for us because I think in reality, seeing those riders from Ghana taking part in, say, an African Conti Champs is going to inspire more kids to want to ride bikes. And as always, in all these nations you're operating in and we operate in, soccer is still number one. And we're still trying to make cycling kind of the second sport of Africa, as we keep saying to people.
When I first went to visit and to meet Kareem in Lunsar, he kind of had the basic workings of the Lunsar cycling team then. I mean, certainly it wasn't as developed as it is now, but it was one of the things that really spoke to me while I was there as somebody that's kind of been a passionate cycling fan for a number of decades now. And as somebody who just loves to ride as well, when I was spending time with Kareem, like we went on, we hopped on a couple of mountain bikes, rode through some of the local villages, and then I also got to do a ride with the team, which was a blast. I mean, they all had they had a handful of road bikes. There's probably like maybe a half a dozen guys that were part of the quote unquote team at that point. There weren't any women, I don't think, that first trip. But we went out and did kind of a spirited ride, and they had, older road bikes, and I was still riding a mountain bike, but it was so much fun to ride through the town with the guys and just like even then before the Tour de Lunsar was a thing, like you could feel the energy in the town and people were starting to get really passionate about bicycling. Like they were happy to see the team rolling through town. And since I've been back there on a couple of occasions and have been to the Tour de Lunsar after it had been established a couple of years in, like the fervor that you see there is amazing now. And when you talk about like cycling becoming sort of the second sport of Africa, I think Lunsar is probably that prime example where it may actually have soccer beat out at this point. Like the excitement for the race there and for the cyclists, it is so amazing to see. And it's just great. Like, and I do think that there is absolutely a benefit to the mission and the work of Village Bicycle Project because it does raise that visibility. And one of the challenges that we first faced when we started the organization was we had to like really market and sell ourselves. We're like, this is what we're doing. We want to come in. And there was always this bit of skepticism about, is this going to be beneficial? Like, what is this? Like now it's gotten to the point where there is so much demand for the program bikes that we distribute that we can't keep up with it. So we went from really having to like sell ourselves and like convince these communities, like, let us work with you, let us bring bikes in. And now there's this unending demand for us to work with these communities. Like we have a constant flow of applications, and that visibility and that desirability and that recognition has completely changed sort of the nature and the value of the work that we do. And it's just tremendous to see that.
They do go hand in hand because we put some 700 bikes into Eritrea. And I just wonder how many like Biniam Gourmets or Natnel Tesfet Zones were like riding those bikes, and they were riding their bikes to school. But that, like you said, that's the gateway to, maybe I can race this 30-pound bicycle. One of our top riders in Rwanda was Gasore in the early years. And Gasore just kept selling potatoes, got a really junky bike to start, and would stay with Team Rwanda as long as he could. And he kept doing that until we said, who's this guy on this like 20, 25-pound aluminum bike, like following Team Rwanda? So I totally get it. And, I was going to ask you the question, like, how do you measure success beyond the number of bikes distributed? But I think this whole conversation has been about success.
The metrics question is something that comes up all the time, right? You're doing nonprofit work. People want to know the outcomes of what you're doing. And theoretically, especially when we work with school children, like we try to track attendance and grade point average, which you would think should be fairly easy to come across. And it's amazing. And it's not just a challenge that we faced. We're doing a partner program right now with Schools for Salone that's really working specifically with schools in Sierra Leone. It is amazingly difficult to get these simple metrics that we need. And as much as I would love to see them, I think you kind of hit on it, Kimberly, in that, like, I think the passion that we see is probably the best metric that there is. Both the fact that people are really exuberant, especially young kids, exuberant about getting a bike and where that can lead them. And the fact that these communities are all lining up to work with us. I think that that's the best metric that we have. The fact that there's this essentially limitless demand. And it's not just in Sierra Leone and Ghana. I mean, every month we get multiple requests from communities, organizations across Africa, across the world, being like, we love what you're doing. Can we work with you? And unfortunately, we're very limited in the resources that we have. Like, we don't have the capacity to expand right now. But it's great to see this work in the recognition, and that more people want to see this out there. Like, how do we do this? How do we get more buffalo bikes through World Bicycle Relief, or how many more donated bikes through Village Bike Project? Like, all the different organizations that are working on this are barely scratching the surface of the demand out there. And whether you look at it from individual health, community health, sustainable transportation, environmental capacity, like, there are so many benefits to this. And it's one of those things that I think a small amount of financial investment has a tremendous amount of long-term payback. And even though we're not always the best at quantifying that, like, you can see it firsthand when you're there, both in the passion and the outcomes. Like, there's no doubt of the value of the work that we're doing and the impact that it has on the local community.
I so appreciate that, because it's always been really hard, as you say, to quantify things in really neat numbers. Like, how do I quantify Adrian Niyonshuti becoming the first Black African to complete an XCO mountain bike race in the Olympics? Like, how many kids that did that inspire? How many kids has Biniam Gourmet inspired by winning 3 stages at the Tour de France? It's such a hard thing, and I've spent years trying to quantify, and most of my stuff is qualitative data. It's the narrative. And I think you just said the perfect word is passion. You have a groundswell of passion for the sport, whether it's, I'm going to ride my bike to school and do better and go to university, or I'm going to be in the Tour de France and be Biniam Gourmet or Kim LaCourte. Without you guys, without, Masaka Cycling Club, without Quebeca, like, all of these organizations feed into essentially producing these young men and women who do have either the ability or the want and desire to take it to the next level or to be a professional. So it's so important. We always talk about it being a village. Like, we can't do what I do with, out you guys. For those of you who don't know, we do this amazing fundraiser every year. I think this was the 6th year of it. And we have a very generous donor who underwrites this event, and he invites people to join. And we do, what was it, like 330 miles through Utah in a loop. And those of you who haven't been to Utah, prettiest state in the nation, in my opinion, and just fabulous riding, tons of climbing. And Joshua got to be part of the Suffer group this year. I think there was like 23 of us, people from
Yes.
DC. Josh, you're from Salt Lake, people from St. Louis, all over. We all came together with the goal of raising money for Africa Rising Cycling. And it was Josh's first time there. And so, what was your takeaway from that weekend?
It was a great event. I had been trying to coordinate my schedule to participate for probably 3 or 4 years now, and I'm happy that it finally worked out. Um, I mean, it's a great event in terms of what it does, raising money for Team Africa Rising. It's a fantastic experience because it's a really good group of people. There's just great camaraderie. And again, whether you're a stronger cyclist or not, there's a level of support there that I think kind of sees everybody through the day. And as you said, Kimberly, like I think that Utah has some of the best cycling in the world. For those that don't know, the name of the ride is SUFFER. It's an acronym that stands for Southern Utah Fun for Every Rider, which it's solid. It's a good one. It's a no joke ride. I mean, like 100-mile days with 8,000 to 9,000 feet of climbing, but going through a couple of the national parks here, like Bryce Canyon and Capitol Reef and riding through Escalante, it really is, I think, in the running for one of the prettiest roads in America. Like it is spectacular. So I would say that if you ever have the opportunity to participate in that, I would highly recommend it. It really is a brilliant ride in an absolutely beautiful place and just a tremendous group of people to cycle with for a long weekend. So yeah, 2 thumbs up.
Josh and I have been talking about doing one here in Wyoming, because we literally have gravel roads for like in every direction for hundreds of miles. In fact, Jonathan Rafiki is here from Rwanda, the national junior champ for Rwanda in mountain bike, and he's here training. He's going to do Steamboat Gravel. And we went out and did 100K. We did the 60-mile course that we had done at Battle of the Gravel, and we did the 100K course for him. And a friend, Sasha from Holland, was here, and he did the motorbike. I followed in the truck just to make sure that we didn't lose him. But all we saw for literally hours was like antelope and some deer and no people. So, you know, definitely if you're interested in joining us on this Suffer event, please drop us an email. We'll put you on the list. It is an invite only event. That's why we're doing the Wyoming one, to maybe open it up to more people. And, we come together to do good for African cyclists. That's basically it. And we have a lot of fun riding our bikes because if you love African cycling, you probably love riding yourself. So, yeah, so stay tuned. We will definitely get you more information on Wyoming Supper, which is tentatively slated for mid-September this year. Maybe you can make it out for that, Jeremy.
I was a mountain biker in the 90s. That was gravel. We invented it. So I'll break out one of the old bikes. But Joshua, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It's been wonderful to hear more about Village Bicycle Project and the work in Ghana and Sierra Leone. If you could look forward, say 10, 15, 20 years in the future, as we've mentioned, cycling is becoming part of the infrastructure of Africa, but what more do you think could be done to bring the bicycle to the fore in African transportation?
I think about this every time that I'm there, and particularly if I'm walking around Accra or Freetown. I mean, I would love to see, the countries and the cities really get behind cycling. And you see what's happened in Europe. I mean, certainly you have cities like Amsterdam and Copenhagen that have been doing it for years. France really got behind it, Paris in particular, in the last decade or a little bit longer. I think what I would love to see is for the governments to really get behind cycling as a mode of transport, and just in terms of like being a valuable resource to the community. And I think that some of the work that we're doing, again, when you talk about like the profile of cycling, part of what we're accomplishing is doing that. Like, when you finally have the World Cycling Championships in Africa and in Rwanda, like that raises it. And I think that if, and I have no idea how to accomplish this personally, but whatever the sustainable transportation focus is, or whoever is working on that in Africa, could really sort of continue to plant the seeds so that local communities, local governments really get behind it as a mode of transport and recognize the benefit of that. I would love to see that happen. I don't know, I don't know exactly how that's going to come about, but I keep hoping that, as we continue to raise the profile of cycling, both in Africa and around the world, that it becomes a selling point. And as somebody that used to work in urban transport, like I do see it really becomes aspirational in the sense that when you get somebody that recognizes a community that's really doing it well, and then if you could get that same level of appreciation in African cities, like I would love to see that. But I think the best thing that Team Africa Rising or Village Bicycle Project can do in that capacity to kind of keep moving it down the road is just planting those seeds every chance they get, and every time a new student gets a bike in their hand, or every time a new community recognizes that they want to work with an organization and get bicycles into the community, like it's one step further down that road. And I think that that's, at least from my perspective and the work that Village Bicycle Project is doing these days, like that is what we do. Every day we get up, try to get as many bikes into the country as possible. We try to work with as many communities as possible. And it's just planting those seeds every day and hoping that one of them is going to really blossom and turn into a professional racer, or, a community changer, or maybe a politician who's like, we're going to turn Accra into the best cycling city in Africa. You never know what that transformation is going to be. But I think that that's the work that we do on a daily basis, is just really starting those initial journeys on a bicycle and then seeing where they go.
That's exactly it. And, Jeremy and I were just in Benin, in Cotonou, and Cotonou has this huge bike path along the ocean. It's amazing. And I hope that the newly elected president continues the legacy of Patrice Talon, who was really focused on making Cotonou walker biker friendly, cycling friendly. And you can actually take this brand new road all the way to Ouida, all along the coast. And it's just fantastic. And that's exactly what you're talking about. Just, if there's interest in cycling, if they see success for their team, if it raises the country's profile, it just makes it easier in the country to then advocate for things like that. So I totally agree.
So, Joshua, I mean, what can people do to help you?
I would say from Village Bicycle Project's perspective, like we're always looking for people that are passionate about the work that we do. If you have an old bike in your garage, or parts that you're not using, or an older, like we do a shipment every year from Salt Lake City. We have partners around the US and the UK that we ship from. If you have stuff that you're not using anymore and you want it to be transformative, please reach out to us. We will figure out a way to get it from you and get it into the hands of somebody that it'll benefit. And also from an organizational perspective, like we're always looking for new board members. If what we're doing speaks to you and you want to get involved, please reach out to me and we will figure out a way to kind of get you involved. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for that, Joshua. And we encourage people to reach out to you. We'll put links in the show notes. Thanks everyone for listening.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode of the Africa Rising Cycling Podcast. If you like what you have heard, please do share our podcast with your friends and on social media. Leave us a review or even make a donation to Africa Rising Cycling. All of this will help us to continue to bring you fascinating stories about African cycling.